The meeting is now called to order. Roll call, Mr. Shapiro.
All board members are present.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I am going to read our CCS mission statement. And that statement is that Carmel Clay Schools will provide opportunities for all students to realize their potential in an ever-changing world. Up first this evening, we have public comment. And typically, I'm going to glance at these, typically speakers are placed in one or two groups, but we have only speakers this evening from group one, which is CCS students, parents and guardians, employees, and Carmel residents. This evening is a workshop session, so comments must be on items that are on the agenda. And as a reminder, participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation. Speakers may not yield their time to another speaker. Comments may not reference specific corporation employees, patrons, or students. Comments shall be directed to the board. No person may address or question individual board members. The school board will not act on or respond to questions or comments made during public comment, but will take them under advisement. The numbers for the speakers this evening have been placed in our bingo basket, and we're going to have the numbers called out one at a time. The first speaker, I will call your name, and then I will name the second person who will be on deck.
So number 5 is up first, and number 6 is on deck.
So first we have Dondi Bacon Rubble up first, and then on deck is Jill Cooper.
Good evening. My name is Dondi Bacon-Rubel, and I am the negotiation representative for the school board, for the Bus Drivers Association. I'm here tonight to emphasize the critical importance of having the Bus Drivers Association formally recognized by the school board, thereby ensuring a voice and voting rights of all its members. As we navigate the complexity of our modern world post-COVID, it's become increasingly evident that our drivers are much more interested, more aware, and want to play a more pivotal role in the aspects of their daily lives. The Drivers Association serves as a unified voice for the drivers. It provides a platform where we can come together, share their experiences, and address common challenges. By joining forces within the association, members can advocate for improving work conditions, fair wages, and better safety standards. A collective voice always has a much greater impact than an individual one, and through the association, we often effect positive change, protect the rights and interests of all drivers. I know the associations can sometimes be challenging for administrators, simply because the process of meaningful discussion can take extra time these days. The association is learning a lot about how to streamline this process, but there will always be points that need further dialogue. The association is happy to meet earlier with administrators to allow time for these discussions. By having terms ready to be ratified by the drivers before the first pay, the issues of back pay can be avoided. Even in this new post-COVID world, our drivers are realistic and understanding, but the ability to vote on these terms of their employment is very precious to them. It is their voice and their vote that they can help shape the policies that have always had a positive effect on our students, our drivers, and the school district itself. In conclusion, we hope and trust the Board of School Trustees recognize and concur with us that the formal agreement between the board and the associations are beneficial to our shared culture and should be continuing into the future, just as they have been since 1976. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Jill Cooper on deck.
Number 3.
On deck is Russ Harris.
Good evening. My name is Jill Cooper, and I am a Mohawk Trails parent, and I've been actively involved in supporting our school community by volunteering in our media center, PTO, and working with other families to advocate for positive solutions for our children and staff. I want to thank the board for listening to families at the last meeting. For many of us, it has been a long time of feeling unheard, and it meant a great deal to have our voices acknowledged. As parents, we believe the needs of Mohawk Trails should be included in upcoming budget decisions. In particular, families are asking for the enclosure of the library so that it can once again function as the heart of learning at our school, while also providing staff and students with greater safety and peace of mind, as well as a safe and functional playground. We understand that the most pressing safety concerns for our playground are expected to be addressed, hopefully by fall break, and we thank the district for their attention to this matter. It was stated at the last meeting that the estimated cost for enclosing the library was said to be around $150,000. In the context of the district's $63 million upcoming budget, this is a modest investment, yet it would have a long-term impact on both academic success and safety. At the last meeting, it was also explained how major school renovation priorities are determined. Families would appreciate further clarity on this process as understanding the rationale, for example, a $2.5 million playground budget for Cherry Tree. This would better help us understand how the Mohawk Trails projects are considered and supported. Regarding the library, families were encouraged to hear that it is confirmed that the enclosing of the space is possible. Since that meeting, parents have reached out for updates, but we have not received clear direction or communication from the district on what next steps will be. At this point, families are asking for clarity so that we can partner with the district to ensure this project moves forward in the best way possible. The Mohawk Trails community is eager to be a part of the solution. We are ready to collaborate and support this process, but transparency and timely communication are essential so we can understand where things stand and how we can help. Thank you for your time, your service, and for considering the needs of Mohawk Trails with these upcoming budget items. We look forward to working together to make these improvements a reality for our children and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Russ Harris. On deck,
Number 4.
on deck is Rick Carlton.
Hello, I am Russ Harris. I'm treasurer of the Carmel Clay School Bus Drivers Association. Today, teachers and bus drivers are still the only two groups of school employees that have a voice in their pay, safety, and working conditions. As of last week, the Bus Drivers Association and administration had agreed on terms of the driver's employment, yet some administrators are still recommending that the formal agreement between the Bus Drivers Association and the Board of School Trustees be ended. I know it's not always expedient discussing and coming to terms. However, after hearing the administration's sincere concerns regarding the new property tax laws, the association came on board quickly and agreed with the proposed daily rates. Terms outside of the daily rates were negotiated to a slightly higher amount for drivers, but nothing significant enough to strain our school finances, but certainly significant enough to have a positive impact on our drivers. It's not all about money, though. The association has provided valuable insight to the administration for 50 years. I feel discontinuing our formal agreements with the trustees will end up being detrimental to our school district and not in the best interest of drivers or the administration. It's hard for the administration to be versed on all things from behind a desk. They may not be able to engage with parents and students every day. They may not hear from the drivers. The association can and does. The association distills and filters all the points of discussion and does it in a positive, productive way for administration. The association really does like our administrators. We've become quite friendly over the years. However, I'm afraid that tipping the scales to eliminate our recognized collective voice could tarnish our relationship and breed disinterest and apathy. I feel the valuable insight the association has provided for over 4 decades may slowly evaporate. In conclusion, I would like to strongly recommend that the Board of School Trustees continue our history in written, formal agreements that recognize the association as the bus driver's exclusive representative. I also would like to encourage the administration to continue considering the association a valuable resource and a trusted partner because we absolutely are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Rick Carlton, and on deck,
Number 1.
On deck is Mary Swing.
Good evening. My name is Rick Carlton. I am a Carmel Clay bus driver. I've been here, this is my start of my 19th year, and the reason I'm here is because I love what I do. I love the relationships that I build with my parents, with my students. I've had the same routes for, this is the 5th year. I hope to have the same routes for many years. One thing that concerns me is the uncertainty of having a collective bargaining voice with Carmel Clay Schools. The other thing that concerns me is the inequity in the pay that we have been under for the last 4 years. I addressed that 2 weeks ago as being the only group that works the second third of our day at a 25% pay reduction. It could have been solved the very first year by declaring a new daily rate, which essentially amounted to no raise at all. But we'll get past that. I sent each of the board members an email last week outlining some facts and figures, which I won't get into because I want to focus more on the possibility of losing our negotiating rights and just being considered a non-teacher support staff. We are much more. And I invited any of you on the board to come run routes with me and see what it is like that I do every day and the relationships that I build. That's what it's about. Dr. Ostrick said about 7 years ago that classroom management was not about rules and regulations. It was about building those relationships. It's the same way with us. It's the same way with dealing with our administrators that we have to come and sit down with every 2 years to negotiate fairness in our compensation and benefits. It seems for the last few years, though, that administration could care less how the bus drivers feel. They want to come in and go, well, this is all we can do. We were told 2 weeks ago that previous association presidents pretty much came in and said, well, what's it going to be this contract? Okay. And that's not right. We, as with teachers, spend the most time with the students. Therefore, we should be able to negotiate as a separate group, just like the teachers. And that's my feeling. I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mary Swing, and on deck
Number 2.
is Paul Peterson.
Good evening. I am Mary Swing, and I am the president of the Bus Drivers Association. The last time we were here, we shared with you the concern that the administration was recommending to dissolve a 50-year relationship between the Board of School Trustees and our association. You challenged us to look inward and be reasonable in our negotiations with administration. I am happy to report that we have fulfilled that directive and have come to a satisfactory agreement with administration. We are, however, in strong disagreement that the agreement between the association and the Board of Trustees be ended. The agreement outlines all the benefits and salary terms accepted, but more importantly, it formally recognizes the association as the exclusive representative to our drivers. The future of our important relationship rests with you, the Board of Trustees, because you must decide whether you believe this association remains valuable. We strongly believe it does. For decades, our association has been more than just a negotiation partner during contract years. We provide ongoing insight and support that directly impacts student safety, staff well-being, and district operations. For example, we've raised concern about students having to walk between buses at the high school, helping to prevent potential safety incidents. We've identified security risks such as unlocked driver gates at T1 and T2 after drivers coming back from late night field trips. We've offered input on the driver's handbook, brought forward paid corrections, and ensured important information about the administration reaches every driver quickly as possible. Every day, we are on the front lines at the schools, on the buses, and in our community. Drivers often share issues with us that they would not feel comfortable raising directly with administration. In this way, the association acts as a bridge, ensuring that problems are heard and addressed before they grow larger. We are committed to maintaining a healthy and productive relationship with administration, but if our role is reduced to simply accepting what is placed before us without dialogue, without negotiation, and without a real vote, then we lose the very foundation this relationship was built upon decades ago. We ask you, the Board of Trustees, to recognize the value we bring, not only in what we negotiate, but in the daily insights we provide that keep students safe, support our drivers, and strengthen the district. This relationship has lasted years for a reason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Paul Peterson.
Good evening. My name is Paul Peterson, and I live here in Carmel. Like many residents, even those of us like me who don't have children in the school system, I care deeply about the strength of our schools, not only for the quality of the education, but because they're the foundation of our community's reputation and our property values. And a reliable school system is central to that. Recently, when just one bus driver took a planned day of PTO, I understand that students waited for as much as 30 minutes at school because no other driver was available. That was a single absence we knew about in advance, and to their credit, the district was able to respond quickly and find another driver to get those kids home. But if we can't cover one driver on a planned leave, what happens when somebody calls in sick unexpectedly? Or heaven forbid, when two drivers are out? This is a clear sign that our system is already stretched thin. If we take away collective bargaining, we risk encouraging more drivers to leave and discouraging new ones from applying. With an aging workforce, many of our drivers well into retirement age, that pipeline is already fragile. The last thing we can afford is to make the job less attractive. When our transportation system falters, it's not just an inconvenience. Family schedules are disrupted, kids' safety and learning are affected, and over time, the district's reputation suffers. That impacts home values and in the long-term strength of our community. As homeowners and taxpayers and parents, we all have a stake in making sure this system is strong. I'm not here to prescribe an exact solution, but I do ask the board to take a hard look at what it will take to shore up our driver network. Competitive pay, retention strategies, and real efforts to bring in the next generation of drivers. That's how we safeguard both our education of our kids and the investment that we've made in Carmel. So I encourage you, please take this opportunity to reinforce, not weaken, a system that is already showing signs of strain. Thank you for your time, and more importantly, thank you for your service to our schools.
As always, we thank the public for participating in public comment. Next on our agenda is the consent, and tonight the consent items include the personnel report, claims, and payroll. And as a reminder, this consent portion of our meeting is where we have a designated section and routine items are grouped together so that we can consider them and approve them in a single motion. Do I have a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda?
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to approve as a group all items on the consent agenda, including the personnel report, claims, payroll. And that's it.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on consent? All right, we will now vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have our workshop topic, and that is the presentation of the 2026 budgets. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. Be right with you. Okay, this evening, I'd like to present and make some comments before we start. As I think everybody knows, this is really an exceptional year. Every time the legislature meets, and every 2 years, and they adopt a 2-year formula for school funding, something changes. This year, about everything changed. And so I thought I would start by giving a little bit of overview relative to comments on the budget, and then I'll get into the presentation of each fund and so forth. And some of you have seen some form of that in the past. But first, I want to start by emphasizing that these budgets, our Director of Finance has spent all summer putting all the details that you're going to see an overview of that. But the budgets we're not deciding how the money is going to be spent. Typically, the budget, those major decisions have been made, as you know, over 95% for salary and benefits. And so oftentimes in Carmel, when we receive the state formula from the biennium for 2 years, many of the budgets you have proceeded to approve salary and benefit changes or increases for both years, in which case that's on a fiscal basis. This is our budget that was on a calendar. And so the budget really is half of one fiscal year and half of the other. This year, it's different than that because this year, as you know, we only recommended 1 year of salary adjustments because of all the uncertainty. And so for us, that's a little different. Many districts have always kind of settled 1 year at a time. This year, as you can see, our budget does reflect revenue for the whole year, or at least our estimate of it. But the revenue is pretty solid. We have a formula. We now have the assessed value. There's still some unknowns. You know, we're not 100% sure like we typically would be with the property taxes because of Senate Bill 1 that you've all heard about. But the revenue is pretty solid. The expenditures, on the other hand, you'll see in a minute that we assume expenditures because we have to for a whole calendar year, but you'll see that the first half's already done. We have salary increases except for teachers, and the teachers are out. They're under contract until June 30th for this school year, and so again, it's reflecting that fact. The second half is not finished. We know the revenue, or at least a pretty close estimate, but you'll see in a minute that you haven't decided on salary increases. We haven't decided on premium increases for insured benefits and so forth. So you'll see that in a minute. But I want to point out that on the revenue side, from the state, in part significantly because we also had declining enrollment this year of 174 students, which you'll see that, and you probably are aware of that, but the public may not be. But that has a major impact on funding. And so we're receiving about 40% of our additional funding from the state formula and about 60% from our referendum, which reflects one reason why the board has approved referendums in this district since 2010 to supplement the state funds. And we're very fortunate, as we always say, and I want to say it one more time, because Hamilton County, it looks pretty typical. All of our neighbors have referendums, but we're about a total of about 50 out of about 400 school districts. So when you move out, if you get outside of Hamilton County, like a lot of things in Hamilton County, that doesn't reflect the whole state. And so I wanted to share that. And then finally, I wanted to make a comment about the state education funding, which, as you know, since 2010, the education fund has been, the formula is for the education fund from the state, which means it's funded with property tax. Prior to that was a mix of property and property tax and sales tax, I'm sorry. And so in our case, it's still sales tax from the state, property tax through our referendum. And so, but I will just say that I, at least, and I know many others, have concerns about the state funding because of the three things that I've mentioned that we have, or I've identified here. We have charter schools in this state, as we're all aware of. We have vouchers in the state, and then most recently, we've added textbooks, which I was personally in favor of. We were only about one of maybe 4 states in the United States that charge parents for textbooks. I'm not opposed. I think we should have as close as we can get to a free public education, and the textbook seems to be contrary to that. So I'm in favor of it. The concern is that there's been no more money adjusted. I mean, it's sales tax, and so the sales tax 7% has not changed since the funding was changed to the state, and that was in 2009. And so those three items add up to $1.2 billion, and it's growing. It grew quite a bit this year because of, and you heard a lot of this through the legislative session, but the voucher program got significantly increased, and which is now about $500 million a year. And all of that comes from the same bucket, sales tax primarily, that funds our education fund. And so, and I point that out because if you bring that down to the local level, to Carmel Clay Schools, it's about $1,200 per student, or about $19 million. And you know that our referendum is $30 million, so 2/3 of it helps offset. At this point, that would be 2/3 of this. And so, and as I noted, then the sales tax has gone from, it went up, but it has not changed since 2009. But as you know, our referendum has. And you'll see in a minute that we have definite concerns this year, the most I've seen since I've been here, relative to the funding for this year, or maybe I should say the lack of it. And so with that, I'll now start the budget presentation. And you got to hit present, yes. Hold on a sec. Okay, so as you know, we have 5 major funds, and these are tax-supported funds. We probably have 70 funds altogether with federal funds and grants and all kinds of things. But these are the major funds, all of which are tax-supported. First, the education fund, which is our single largest fund, and that's the fund I just was commenting on, and that's state-funded. And it is primarily for salary and benefits for teachers and instructional assistants. And as the name implies, the educational fund expenses directly out in the schools. So transportation, maintenance, all of that's not a part of the education fund. That's part of the second fund, which is the operations fund. But here, the next fund that I would talk about is the operating referendum, which I've alluded to, and that's supplementing the state funding from the formula, and that's subject and has to have had voter approval, because essentially taxpayers are saying, yes, you have my permission to raise our tax rates beyond the cap. That in Indiana there is a cap, as you know. And so then the second referendum, we have 2 referendums. The second one is a safety referendum. I believe we may still be the only school district that has a safety referendum. That came into play about just a few years ago, and we were the first district to ask for one. And as you know, that funds our resource officers in every school, our social workers, and a major program for in-school student counseling and therapy, not our employees. And then the next fund is our operations fund, and that's the second major fund, and that's the second fund for most school districts. And they only have they may only have those 2 funds. And that funds things like just what it sounds like. It's transportation, both drivers as well as buses and so forth. The whole operation of transportation. It funds maintenance. It funds our custodial staff, our utilities, and those custodians and utilities alone are about $6 million a piece every year, and as well as any central office functions or staff, and some other professional services. And then finally, our debt service fund, as the name implies, this is servicing debt primarily as a result of, it is bond issues typically. And in our case, that's exactly what it is. And so they're bond issues primarily for dollar-wise for facilities, but also meaningfully for technology. And we're up to, a few $1 million just out of this fund for technology, plus the technology staff and so forth are also out of the operations fund. So those are the funds. And with regard to state funding, as I had mentioned earlier, we have, and you'll see it in another chart, but we had declining enrollment this year, which was disappointing because our forecast from our demographer, it's fairly recent, indicated we'd be level, and we've made decisions and recommendations based on level students, and the enrollment's coming. Right now, it's about 174 kids down, and that we had been up for 2 years in a row. Not 174, but at least we were in the positive, and we had a few more kids the last 2 years. Right after COVID, we did decline for 3 years, and which is the way the formula works. That's financially very painful. And also, for the first time ever, the textbooks that have, for a couple of years, have been funded through the state rather than charging parents. But now there was a change made to where that funding is reflected in the education fund. And so for us, that's $2.5 million. So if you were to compare this year's budget to last year's, you have to, apples to apples, you take off the $2.5 million because it's going to be $2.5 million higher because of that change. With regard to property tax funding, again, I think certainly the board has, and many people in the community are aware of the passing of Senate Bill 1, which has, by design, is suppressing and lowering property tax. That's the intent, but it's not just doing it this year. You'll see the reflection. This is our first year, but overall, it continues to do that at some level for the next 6 years. So there's more to come with that. So with regard to the state funding, and again, I had mentioned this earlier, but you can see the basic grant last year was 108, it's 111 this year, plus $3 million. But when you adjust that for textbooks, it's $642,000. And you know how large our fund is. However, the next fiscal year for 26-27, it's up that adjustment. Now we're comparing textbooks in there with textbooks in there. So next year, assuming a level enrollment, and I'll emphasize that, because we are, and our projection was level as well. But the problem was it was level this year too, but it came in less. And that happens sometimes because now that's an exact science, and my hope would be is maybe we'll grow 170 kids next year and kind of get them back. But I don't really think that's likely. But you just don't know for sure. But given the assumption we'd be up 1.6 million for the second fiscal year. Now keep in mind this budget that I'm showing you is half of the first year and half of the second year. Okay, and then you can see the negative enrollment this year. Going to property tax funding and referendums, the operating referendum you can see is 14.8 billion, and now it's 15.7, as well as the safety referendum, and both of those have a net change of 6%, and which is a good thing for the school district because it's and could be a bad thing for the property tax owner in the sense that it is 6%, but that's an average. That doesn't mean everybody's taxes change 6%. But the overall assessment, that includes, 20% of our assessment is in TIF districts, but we get that on a referendum. And so overall it's up 6%, which is higher than we expected, and was welcomed in the sense of, from a funding standpoint, because of what I said about the loss from the state because of the enrollment. And so we would be much worse off as we would be without a referendum in the first place. And so it continues to support the local school district. And then you can see the operating referendum and the 6% increase with the operating referendum as well as the safety referendum, then you see the dollars associated. Going to local property tax funding for operations fund and debt service. First, you'll see the header of the circuit breaker loss. It's credit when it's on our tax bills because it is a credit. It means you're going to you would have paid higher taxes except for this circuit breaker, which caps for a homeowner. It caps it at 1% of the net assessed value, and so that starts. But for the governmental units, it's a loss because you're getting less tax dollars, and so that's why I express it this way. And for us, that's $1.9 million in the operating fund, and it's only it's only in the operating fund. That, by the way, is $1 million less than it has been, and which contributes to our operating fund having being financially stable. In other words, we end up with $1 million more than we did the year before, and so that right now that's helping us, but it's not permanent. We anticipate it being at about $2 million for 2 years. The third year back, it was $3 million. So we'll get that benefit, if you will, for 2 years, and that has to do with how the assessed value came in. When it came in high, that also means that your number to hit the 1% is higher. So we have less people being capped, and so there's that. Then you see just a small amount of I'll call it like a local circuit breaker, where the local government can choose to have $16,000 worth of impact to the taxpayer, and it's in our total finances, it's fairly insignificant, but that's what that is. But here's the big one and a new one. The supplemental homestead credit loss, and this is new with Senate Bill 1. And I want to emphasize this because you'll see almost $1.4 million loss in the operations fund. That's half of it, and the other half, because the amounts are similar, is almost $1.6 million. So about almost $3 million with the new credit, and that's a credit. That's not a deduction. And so that credit cost Carmel Schools almost $3 million in these two funds. Didn't affect the other funds, but it did affect these. And so and you can see the total and then the resulting projected revenues. So that's how we get to the bottom line on revenue. And some general expense assumptions, and these are really significant this year. First is I mentioned that the budget the details of the budget, and in the terms of the totals, you'll see again that we're reflecting the ADM that had dropped 174, but then we're assuming in 26, 27 that it stays level, and that's an important assumption. And then we are facing a deficit in the education/operating referendum, in that we are assuming, but we're still assuming with that deficit of no increase in benefits and no raises or including increments. So not assuming that, because trying to presume what's going to happen. I didn't want to put some number in there and then which would make the deficit worse and be presuming we're just going to make it worse. So we'll talk about that over the next several months and well ahead of when we'll have to make some decisions. But I purposely set it up that way because I didn't want to be presumptuous on what's going to happen the second half of 26. That's the conversation that will be lengthy. And then we have another increase, and I say another because the TRF contribution is going up January 1. It'll be $400,000 more money, which has to come out of that new revenue. About 3 years ago, we heard pleasant news that the rate was going down 2%, and so we used that 2%. That got reflected in, essentially, it looked like unencumbered money, so it became a part of what was available for raises and staffing and so forth. Now it's working the opposite. The new rate is 7.1%. 2 years ago, when it got a lot of publicity, positive publicity, because we were helping the local community at school, and they were by 2%, and which was what, $2 million or something. The new rate is 7.1. And so we went 7.5 down to 5.5, creeped it up to 6 or 6, so the most recent increase, which is January 1st, it'll be 7.1. So we're almost back where we started from, is what I'm saying. And I wouldn't be shocked if it could end up another increase to 7.5. Now, it changes because it's an actuarial kind of thing. They have to have enough money to, this is money that contributes to pay for the pensions. And we have a similar thing for our employees that are in PERF, or Public Employer Retirement Fund. It's 11.2%, by the way. And because actuarially, it's a higher percentage is needed in order to fund that pension. And so those are the major assumptions this year. And then you can see our total with all these funds, and we've combined it, for this purpose, we've combined education and operating RFON because that's how I always present it, since they're used for the same thing. And you can see our total then budget is just under $253 million. As I said, I think last year, or the last time, I think it was 140 something, but again, this has textbooks in it and some other things. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. Now, I'll start with the education and referendum fund, then go through the other ones. So first, with regard to revenue, you can see it's $145 million, and you'll see in a minute on what happens with expenses. And again, it's state formula. These are, I won't read it to you because it's just repeating what you've already heard in terms of assuming enrollment decline and so forth. Here's the expenses at $147 million. So obviously $2 million higher. So that's going to lower our reserves, and you'll see that in a second. Again, this is restating the basis on which this was projected. And then here we get to the balance in a written form rather than a chart. And you can see we started out with $9.3 million at the first of the year in 25, and we're projecting for that to decline to 6.6. But let me stop there because that's, I believe, $2.8 million. And so we'd all want to know what happened. And here's what happened. A lot of it has to do with that textbook change. You'll remember maybe that a couple months ago, we said we have to close out the textbook fund as this is moving over here. And that textbook fund, because we had just adopted the largest adoption in 5 years. And the adoption, by the way, isn't the same every year. The cost of it, art costs a lot less than language arts, as an example. And so $1.5 million, we paid it from here because now that's where the funding for textbooks is at. But it took $1.5 million. And we haven't recovered that yet. Over time, we would expect that it'll all level out, but not this year. So that's $1.5 million. Then we spent about $2.5 million for the new adoption for this year, which will be paid by the end of this year because the students have those new textbooks right as we speak. And we'll get $2.5 million from the state, but we're only going to get half of it by December because, again, it comes in a fiscal year. And so we'll get about $1.2 million, but we spent $2.5 million. And so that'll work itself out as well because it's just a timing. By the end of this year, we won't buy any more textbooks, but we'll still be getting the other half of the money that will hopefully cover the cost of them. And so that's essentially gets you back to the difference between the beginning cash balance and the ending cash balance. So I would emphasize that that's not an indication of a problem, but the rest of it is. And so then you see that we go down to the bottom and you can see, revenue and expenses, but we get down to the cash balance by the end of 26, by the end of this budget. And now we've dropped another $2 million, and that's a real deficit. That's going to be if we give no raises, no insurance, no nothing, if anything on the plus side there, it'll get bigger. And the deficit will. And so now the balance is 4.6. Now I'm not yelling panic yet. I'm just saying you can see it dropping, and I want to be sure everybody understands that, and that there will be decisions made before July 1st. I'm confident that, well, there kind of has to be, that will reflect the staffing for having lost 174 students. That will either, and we'll still have that recurring other half of that expense for losing enrollment. So part of this $2 million difference, you know, 700 or 800,000 of it will continue unless we stop it, which I'll be recommending that we stop it. And because I want to make clear that this is a situation that I'll be recommending as your, your CFO, that we not assume to take years to make the adjustment. We have adequate reserves, but that's what they are. So we would not recommend, continue to use those with a recurring expense. It's not going to stop itself. And so my advice later will be, that'll be part of the conversation in the next several months. We need to respond to, there's different ways to respond, but we do need to respond, and we will need to respond. Now going to the operations fund, which is the second major fund, we have 56, and this is better because you can see we have 56 million in revenues, and in spite of the fact that you're aware that we have said that it looks like the Senate Bill 1 will be zero increase, we're very fortunate because in this fund, as I said, right now we're losing $1 million less with the circuit breaker, so right away that's a plus, but it's not a permanent plus. But it does handle, to a great extent, it does handle 26. And the raises, by the way, that I recommended and you've approved in June for support staff. And so that's why we could get no increase and still be financially responsible and not show a deficit here because we started on the plus side, if you will, as we go into this year. It's also why we've been able to improve and increase our rainy day fund, as you are all aware of, over the last 2 or 3 years, which we needed to do because we needed to have more money in reserve, both for it helps our bond rating because, Standard & Poor's would like to see about 18% or so, and we started at 8 and had been at 8 for years, and then we said new minimum recommended is 12, and so we're pretty much there. But that is a minimum, not the maximum might be the 18, and there'd be nothing wrong with that. I would think beyond that, I would say we don't have any need to just accumulate cash. We needed enough to be financially stable and to be able to kind of cover a rainy day. That's why it's called a rainy day. And so then you see the expenditures, and they're 55 million, and you see the basis on which those are. And then I'll go to the same sheet. So we start at 7.6. It does go down to 6.2 by the end of this year, but then it's back up to 7.4. So from beginning of 25 to the end of 26, as far as it goes through this budget, this fund is okay. And unlike, this fund is okay, but at this point, but it still has that second half. You haven't approved increases for the second half for anybody of the budget year. And then there's two other things. We have a capital projects plan, which you can see here is one of the plans that we have for things over $10,000, and then a bus replacement plan, which is based on an assumed 12-year cycle and a 5-year plan. So finally, then we have the safety referendum with projected revenue of, and I think it was Mr. Brown that actually recommended. We haven't always included this, so I would like to thank him for reminding me to include it because it is one of our major funds. And we included that. We didn't include this part. But we are this year. So it's 8.2 million on revenue, and as you know, it's based on an approved 5-cent tax rate, which while we didn't start out with levying that much because we didn't need these were new programs, but now we are at the 5 cents and have been for a year, or this will at least be the second year. And as I said, it's funded from property tax. You can see the expenses in that fund are 7.8, and it shows what the primary expenses are by category. And then, again, the same format we started here with a cash balance that's less than what I'd like to have at $467,000. And you can see at the end of 20, which is 2 years later, we're going to be at about $1.4 million, which I don't think is excessive. And I'm not recommending we lower that tax rate because we also, most of this fund is not you approving it directly. It's contracted services with the Carmel, Police Department for our SROs, and a similar arrangement with Ascension for our therapists. And so I'm not as sure what their increases are going to be, although we're all suffering from, as governmental entities, from SB1. But this one's a little less predictable as far as increases because a good deal of the increase is a second party. Okay, so then we get to debt service, and again, you see $5.4 million. In the debt service fund, we're permitted by statute to maintain a reserves of 15% and of the annual payment. And so again, you hear 12%, here's 15%. It used to be 50%, by the way, but for older bonds it was. We no longer have the older bonds, so we're at the 15%. And then you see it dropping a bit to 5.4 and then down to 2.8. Part of what you're seeing over this 2 years, remember that $1.5 million that is the SB1 credit that taxpayers get, and it's about half of that's coming here and the other half's the operations fund. Then I believe this was asked for too, and you've seen this in different formats, or the same format in a different presentation, but these are all of our bond issues. And I would start by pointing out, you can see when they'll be paid off. So that 21 general obligation bond will be paid off this year. When I say this year, I'm talking about 26. And the 22 bond in 2030. And then we have another general obligation bond that will also be paid off in 26. And so on. And so you go across and you can see when they'll be paid off and clear down to I guess the longest one would be 2035. And we're pleased with that and proud of it, frankly, that we're able to have, comparatively speaking, a very short payoffs on our debt. The maximum you could have is 20 years, and it's much more typical to have 20 years than it is to have 3 or 5 or 10. And that's due in part by how we manage the finances, but it's also due because of our assessed value level. That's very high per student and makes this, you also need that. I can try to manage the leveling of the payments, but it does start, also the other part of the equation is what's the assessed value. And so then here is the summary of the levies and the rates, and we're showing this we stopped at 2 decimals. When it's actually approved, it's 4. But for all practical purposes, what this is showing you is that the rate for 26 will remain constant with 83 in years prior to that. And so we're able to continue in 26 at least with a level tax rate. You'll hear later that is, and all of my counterparts would say the same thing, that the likelihood is the rate will creep because with a suppressed value, if debt service, for example, where you have a fund that is salaries or needs to reflect inflation, I should say, it wouldn't be salaries necessarily. If you're able to raise, say, a 3% increase or a 4% increase, but the assessed value is suppressed with a new legislation, then that means that the tax rate will go up. And so, as pointed out correctly, that we've maintained a level tax rate. That doesn't mean we never get more money, because the fact is we have and we do. And so you'll see later in a facilities presentation how you'll see kind of the impact of that. So we'll be talking more and more in the future about levy, which is money, and money increase or not increased as compared to tax rate, and which is better, I think, because people understand if had this, you're asking for this much money, but now it's going to go up. When I say level tax rate, for people to go, oh, nothing's changing. Well, it is changing because your assessed value went up. And so I think that's a better approach, really, and it'll be necessary with some of this new legislation. And then you can see the 26 rates, the 25 and 26 rates, and then the same thing with the levy, and you see the difference. And then finally, this is the budget schedule. So this is the first step in about a 2-month process. And at the end of this, you'll be asked to approve a resolution to authorize advertisement of all this so that the public has an opportunity for a hearing to provide any input and comments that they would like to make at that hearing. And then eventually, by the time we get to October the 27th, so a couple of months, that's when you'd be asked to approve this. And in the case of our budget, you must approve it or we wouldn't have a budget to begin with, but also the state has to approve it or we don't have a budget. And so the next step, as you can see, is after it's finished here, then it goes on to the DLGF and so forth. And then finally, it's approved before January, by the end of, excuse me, not later than the end of December, and then it becomes effective January 1st, and that's the routine part. So with that, I'll respond to questions that you might have. It's pretty good for me, right? I'm just saying.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Come on.
Okay, Greg looks like he's ready.
I can
Greg's
make,
ready.
No, I wouldn't say I'm ready. I'd say that I'm ready to start thinking and looking and analyzing.
Yes.
You know, you pointed out a lot of things that are affecting the revenue changes in textbooks and SEA 1 bill and on and
Yes.
enrollment. I think we're going to need I think the board really needs to take a lot of time this go around to really understand these changes that are coming about. You know, and I've got lots of questions, but I haven't got them in my head where I could, you know, put them out in the right priority because there's so much there. And I appreciate it, and you did a lot of work dealing with all the changes that you had to get in, and I appreciate the new format. It was a lot. There's a lot more explanation than we've had in prior years.
Yes.
It's really helpful. You know, I would just say my general reaction to looking at it is that, you know, given that we've got, you know, an enrollment decline, not a huge, but it's there, and it was not predicted, and we've seen that over the last number of years with kindergartners. It's like, well,
Yes.
why is that happening? You know, 15%, those kind of numbers,
Yep.
and seeing that we have to fund some of our expenditures with cash reserves. Is that an accurate statement?
Totally accurate, yes.
Yeah.
And let me emphasize before you go on that this is the first time, as you know, that you've seen this. And I purposely didn't want to send you this PowerPoint without any explanation because I think, and I hope that the narrative helped pull it all together. And so you've seen it, and the public's seen this for the first time. So naturally, you'll need time to process, but as I said, it's 2 months before you actually approve it. So I'm sure by, you know, whenever we have that hearing that you may have more questions than the public does, which would be perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just generally say that I think the board will need to do a lot more, spend a lot more time on looking at the budget this year. And we'll talk a little bit later in this meeting on one of the agenda items is to consider a budget committee. And I think this is a good reason to try that this year. So I don't really have any questions because I wouldn't know where to start because we are just now looking at this. So,
Yes.
But we'll have a lot of questions going forward. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you.
Just a clarifying question, Roger, and thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much for the explanation. Your narrative really did help, and I know these aren't easy issues to explain, and I was really thinking hard as you talked, so I appreciate it. You've got several places in the presentation where you note transfers
Yes.
from one fund to another.
Yes.
And I know that we also, and those are normal and a part of operations. But I think where folks might get confused as we talk about these different funds cannot be commingled.
Yes.
So if they can't be commingled, how can you transfer from A to B? Can you talk to that?
I can. I'm glad you asked that question because when it clarifies, and you may have the answer much more so than somebody in the public in the position that you're in as a board member. But to answer your question, and when the state picked up funding for the education fund, they continued to send money, essentially, I'll say the same amount of money when it was the general fund, except now that that new fund, when it moved from general fund to education fund, things like the operational aspect of what was in the general fund, such as custodians, as I mentioned, utilities, as I mentioned, they can no longer be paid from the education fund. And so they have to be paid from the operations fund, but the transfer means that, but we didn't get any more money, so we continue to get the money in the education fund. So the routine is we transfer, and it's about $18 million, we transfer that education money. We don't commingle the funds, but we transfer the money that's given to us that originally was to pay for custodians and utilities and those other things that are no longer permitted. Now they're paid out of the operations fund, and so the only way we would have any money to pay them is to have the money follow the expense. And so many people have heard about money following the child. This is kind of like that, except it's money following the expense over to that operations fund. So that's the transfer.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, okay, Madam President? Would you, one of the things I noticed with your assumptions, Mr. McMichael, and I was wondering if you would agree with me that there's another one in there that maybe you didn't mention, and if you don't, please tell me you don't. But I think you're also presuming that that tax rate stays essentially the same. I know it's a little bit different out to 4 digits, but the chart you showed, the tax rate
Is the same.
for 25 and 26 is the same, even in a deficit in 26, correct?
Yes.
And that is an assumption you built into it as
Well,
well, right?
It is, but I'm hesitating a little bit because it's also, that assumption is driven by our best knowledge at the moment.
Sure.
In terms of, and specifically relative to changes in legislation.
Okay.
And so when you do the minuses there, it still ends up about the same this year. Now, when we get to the facilities report and that bond issue being proposed, you'll see where, and it'll be the same in debt service as well this year and next year. But our assumption there is as you go past into the third year, that rate's going to go up. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, that the new legislation will have a tendency to increase tax rates, not levy, but rate. In order to get the levy, if you have that choice, in order to arrive at a levy that allows you to manage, to fulfill your needs, if you will.
Right. So the way I summarize that in my mind would be our state legislators cut state taxes and then forced local governments and schools to make decisions to raise taxes to raise the same amount of money. So they talk a lot about how our state taxes are going down, and they are, but they don't talk about how we're going to make up the difference.
I tried to be really polite about that.
Right. And I tried
But
really
now
hard
that
to do the same.
Now that you opened up that subject a little bit, the short answer is I agree with you 100% that, as I said in the comments, the money from the state that funds it's all out of it's out of one pocket of the taxpayer, and everything's out of the taxpayer's pocket, right? But the pocket that feeds the sales tax, and therefore is what primarily funds the education fund, and very proud of the fact, Indiana is very proud that they fund education, and most of the money goes to education, and it does as far as that goes. But as I said, there are those three major things. $1.2 billion does not go to traditional, like Carmel, public schools. Now, charter schools, they've been defined as public schools, and that's a whole other conversation. But the point is the 1.2 billion doesn't come here. it goes somewhere else. But the sales tax hasn't raised. So, to the extent things cost more, I mean, it raises like that. But it's not been, it was raised in 2009 by 16.6%. And and I like the property tax part, all of our property taxes went down, but our sales tax went up 16.6%. So as you can imagine, in Hamilton County, that might be a sizable number in terms of what we spend on, that pays sales tax. But in 2010, what did we approve? Operating referendum. Because right from the same year that happened, we had the great 100-year recession. And what do you think happens with sales tax when people don't have a job or they, whatever? They don't buy stuff if they don't have to. Property tax is politely called a stable tax because at the end of the day, they'll sell your house if you don't pay your taxes, whether you're employed or not. And so, but financially, it's called a stable tax. And that's why, because recession, you still have to pay your taxes. Your house may not appreciate as much, but you have to pay your tax. We all have to pay our taxes, that death and taxes thing. And so we started receiving 100% funding for what then was the general fund. And then Carmel and 49 other school districts almost immediately started supplementing that with the support of our taxpayers with a referendum. And we've been doing it ever since. But you can see it may not be enough. And because we're going to have serious conversation about several $1 million of either cuts or additional money, and that's the 6-month conversation. So we won't start it now, but what you're assuming is right. And when those things happen, and property taxes are suppressed, that could be a motivation to go and say, yeah, but will you give us more money? And the first part is, I might not be asking for you to raise your taxes. I just want back what the governor saved you. That would be the first level. And then I might need more because of some of the things that you saw in the comments. And so that'll be the discussion over the next 6 months. And I would want the public to hear that clearly, because for the first time, and most of the time I've been here, it'll be necessary to have that type of a conversation. And we've been very fortunate for the better part of 30 years, we've not had to have it.
I don't have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This is very dense and it can become very confusing. I know one of the things that is asked many times is, well, if there's a deficit in one fund, why do we keep building things?
Yes.
And can you address that?
I
Because
can.
I think that is a very confusing item.
And that's where the commingling comment comes. You can't commingle because we can't choose to not build a building or rent or maintain a building or to renovate a building, and we cannot choose to not do that and instead have a tax rate, a debt service tax rate in that case. We could change the tax rate, but we can't take that tax rate and borrow money to cover operating expenses or what we'll call education, it's all education in my mind, but that's why it's there, but direct educational expenses like for teacher salaries and all that we talked about. And so each fund has a purpose. And so we have those 5 funds, each have a tax rate, and they each have a purpose. That's what we're saying when we commingle. So we could stop renovating buildings or building new buildings or anything else that somebody might look at and think we don't need that, or, and that's all fair because everybody gets an opinion, right? And I think we should respect everybody's opinion. But then you have to decide on behalf of everybody else, because that's what you were elected for, and that's a little harder to have the responsibility along with the opinion. And so, but that's where it comes where you can't mix them. You could lower the tax rate by not having any debt, and I can show you communities right close to us that have done that for 30 years, and then when their buildings got so bad that collectively they couldn't stand it, they sold $500 million worth of bonds, and they're not done. That won't, and even if it does fix them up, the current generation of taxpayers are going to have to pay off that bond, And the previous taxpayers, their children went to increasingly, inferior schools, if you will, or schools that were in disrepair. And that wasn't fair either. And those taxpayers didn't pay it. They didn't have nice schools, but they also didn't have a debt rate, right? So it's like this. And my philosophy, and I want to make it very clear, and that I've recommended for as long as I've been here, is to try to keep that level because it's fair for kids first. And then it's also fair for their parents and the other community members who are paying for it. And so we have that philosophy, which I shared, at a previous meeting. But that's to answer your question. That's why each fund has a purpose and each fund has a tax
So
rate.
just to be really plain.
Yep.
If we did not remodel a school
Yep.
or did not repair the football stadium,
Yep.
that money doesn't just go
No.
to teacher salaries.
It just
or anybody's salary.
it's all
It
things
just is
equal, it just
gone.
lower the tax rate.
Right.
Because you wouldn't ask for a tax rate to pay a debt that you don't have.
Right.
Right? And and we use terms, by the way, of deferred maintenance.
Mhm.
That's just code for don't take care of it.
Mhm.
And it is what I think. And I think that if we're asking taxpayers to spend millions of dollars to build a facility, we ought to take care of it for them.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. Thank you for the context. It is super helpful. Would like to echo both Chris and Greg's comments. I do think we are going to have a lot of hard work ahead of us.
Yes.
And I do think it's important that we're really candid with the community about the hard work that we have in front of us. We're going to face significant challenges. Every school district is going to be facing significant challenges. And I think it is important that we have these open, honest conversations amongst ourselves and with each other that we're going to have to make some tough decisions in order to make sure that we still provide a high-quality education that we all come to expect here. But it's going to require a lot of work and some really sharp pencils.
Yes, and we'll be in a very good starting position as compared to many places because of you and your predecessors and our staff, teachers specifically, that get a 94% approval rating. And so whatever you're saying, people are going to, 94% of them are going to not necessarily agree with you, but they'll feel that you're honest and forthright. And if it was, if it was a minority percentage, you can see it would be a whole different starting point. So we're going to start at a very good place with a very difficult situation.
Greg had one more.
Just one quick one. You have a schedule in here that has the outstanding debt service, lease rental payments, those guys.
Yes.
And this is just a technical question for the payment year 2026. We'll be looking at a bond proposal here in the later tonight and down the next several board meetings. Will the payments on that bond be manifested in 2026, or would that be likely in 2027?
It'll be 27, and I'm glad you raised that question because occasionally there's something called capitalized interest, and what that means is that we're going to borrow money, including enough money to pay that first year of payment. And there's a number of reasons why you might do that, and we do that occasionally. One reason is that you don't want a payment in 26, coming out of raising the tax rate, in other words, and it's a part of the financial planning. And so when you see the facilities at $63 million, the bond issue would be $66 million or something like that, because it will include that capitalized interest payment, which are the payments that we will make to those bonds. We'll start paying them back in 26, but we won't get current 26 tax dollars to pay them back. We'll use part of the bond sale, and that's what that is.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you so much. Well,
You've got
first
good
part of the
questions.
conversation, just the first. Next on our agenda are the action items, and our first action item is item 5.1, and that is permission to advertise the 2026 budgets, the capital projects plan, the bus replacement plan, and conduct a public hearing. Back to you, Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. So for this action item, it's as you said, it's a follow-up to the budget presentation, and the next step is to, as a required step actually, to offer a hearing for the community to comment on these budgets and these plans.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve action item 5.1, permission to advertise the 2026 budgets, the capital projects plan, the bus replacement plan, and conduct a public hearing?
I move that we vote on action item 5.1, permission to advertise the 26 budgets, the capital projects plan, bus replacement plan, and to conduct a public hearing.
Thank you. May I have a second? It's a mouthful.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, I
This is
believe Dr.
Koke. I
Yes.
do have a piece of discussion, some information I'd like to share with the board and the community. And I'd like to provide a brief but important update on Mohawk Trails Elementary School. And so in recent years, the district has implemented additional security measures that have further strengthened safety at Mohawk Trails. Our certified district safety specialist, along with our Carmel Police Department leadership, have confirmed that the school provides a safe and secure learning environment for our children. Carmel Clay Schools was the first district in the state to have at least one school resource officer in every building, including all of our elementary schools, thanks to our safety referendum. We are grateful to our community for making this possible. These highly trained Carmel Police Department SROs are on site each day, adding a valuable layer of protection at the elementary level. Mohawk Trails is a safe school, and our building remains secure. While listening to community and staff feedback, our safety specialists and school resource officers concluded that additional safety upgrades were not warranted. However, it was determined that changes could be made to enhance the student learning environment. We are moving forward with plans to add walls to the Mohawk Trails Elementary School library to reduce noise and create a more focused space for our students. We are in the early stages of planning and will share an updated timeline with the Mohawk community as the process moves forward. Additionally, we are addressing playground improvements. Replacement parts have been ordered, and those are expected to arrive within 6 to 8 weeks, after which repairs will begin promptly. Our commitment to safety and high-quality learning environments remains unwavering, and we greatly appreciate the continued feedback and support from the Mohawk Trails community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ostrike. So again, the motion on the table is for item 5.1, permission to advertise the 2026 budgets, the capital projects plan, the bus replacement plan, and to conduct a public hearing. We will now take a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is action item 5.2, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing publication of notices of public hearings. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. I have two things I want to present to you and the public. First, I'm going to quickly review the projects that are being recommended. And so the first one being the Smoky Row Elementary School major renovation. And you can see that's estimated at $32.5 million. And that building it's a sister school to Cherry Tree, same floor plans and so forth. It was built 4 years later, in '93 it opened. And so it will have similar renovations, if you will, and modifications as Cherry Tree, so it'll continue to look very much like Cherry Tree when it's finished. And by the way, it's at the next project, and we'll talk more about this specifically later, but Mohawk Trails and Woodbrook are the next schools up, and on today's money, it'll look like $30 or $40 million as well. So what happens when we do that, that becomes the latest, best, new, whatever. And like Carmel Elementary, for example, when that one came up for a major renovation a second time, we built a new Carmel Elementary School, as you know. And so sometimes it goes to a major renovation like Cherry Tree, And then if it's an older building, it sometimes ends up being a replacement for that school. And so more to come on that. And then Carmel Middle School is a mid-cycle, but it's a significant mid-cycle because there are some major pieces of mechanical equipment that we didn't replace when the building had a major renovation in 2007, but we need to now. And so not everything fits as nice and neat as I present in terms of mid-cycle and major. And here's an example to where this mid-cycle is significantly more money than Creekside, for example. That Creekside started out brand new, and so, 17, 18 years later, a couple of years ago, we did a mid-cycle, and it wasn't even close to this because the mechanical system was still in good shape. And then we have high school projects, and you can see what those are. We'll finish the whole stadium project, which significantly includes outside work with paving and sidewalk extensions and fencing and landscaping and those kinds of things. We then have some roof repairs primarily to replace over the cafeteria, which then this started with the exhaust hood, and the majority of the money here is for the roof because we need to replace the roof before we put up a new exhaust system on an old roof. And then you can see the other ones. We have fire suppression was required that we do when we were doing the Polytech project. Actually, it has to be approved at the state. We had always gotten a waiver on certain things. Otherwise, you have to bring the building up to a current standard, and sprinkling is a current standard, has been for years. But is not in our auditorium, so we will have to go back and put that in. We said we would, and that's what this is. Then you see also some outside work. And then Cherry Tree, as was mentioned, the playgrounds are about $2.5 million, and this is finishing that Cherry Tree project. It's included then, because we don't have another project for these two schools, that it'll look like we just did the playground last, whatever we'll change the surface for sure. There's differences in the two schools because the equipment at Cherry Tree has been replaced since it was built, and Smoky Row has not. And so, any rate, that's what that is for. And then we have some district-wide, everything from HVAC repairs to various miscellaneous things as noted. And that totals the $63 million. As I said, you'll see in a minute that the bond issue will be more than that because of, as I mentioned, about capitalized interest and so forth. And this, I don't know if the public can see it. I can hardly see it, but I know what's here. And so what this is showing is a repeat of what Mr. Brown was talking about in terms of, well, no, this is future bond issues, not current bond issues. And so this shows it starts with the existing debt service, then it shows this proposed project in 26, and then it shows another one and another projects in dollar amounts in 27, and we did that because we didn't want to propose one large project in 26, and then it takes 2 or 3 years to finish. So we've got borrowed money just kind of sitting there, and so this is really 2 years in a row, and then we go to. It's not identified here, but in 29, that's going to address Woodbrook and Mohawk Trails primarily, and there will be some other things, as I mentioned earlier, when we get closer to it. This is farther out you go, the likelihood something will change in 10 years, right, or even 2 or 3 years, and then it goes all the way out for 10 years. And what it shows and we do this so that you can see not only what the tax rate is going to be next year or something close to it, but you can see it stays stable at about 30 cents, which it's been for 26 and 27. But then I wanted to emphasize that for the first time for years at least, this would show that it may tick up a bit for about 10 years, and then it drops off drastically. But I would tell you that my best guess is it won't drop off that drastically because there will be another 10 years of projects but I've just carried this out for 10 years, not 20, and so we know our facilities have a useful life, and we've talked all about that. So there will be there will be expenses after 2035, and they're not in here. So in fairness, that it shows the rate going down. I think it will go down, by the way, my best guess, because we're going to have TIF districts. They're going to start being back on the rolls, and that's going to lower the tax rate. All things equal, that'll have a positive effect on the tax rate. It already has a positive effect on our referendum fund, but not our debt service fund. And so we have some things like that in this community that if I were guessing, I would guess that the rate here long-term is going to tend to go down rather than up. I'm not aware of anything that I would project, a spiking or an increase in the rate, but I think there are some things that are working in our favor that will basically expand the tax base, which will lower the rate, all things equal. And so I wanted to share those two before you then. The next step in this process is 2 public hearings. And they're on, I believe, September the 23rd, and then another one October 14th, I believe, and that's in the resolution that you have in front of you, those dates. And this action item would move this to the next. That's the next step for the facility projects. Would be 2 hearings, and then finally, when you do this one, will go on for a while because. You won't be asked to sell, to actually sell bonds and approve the, moving forward with the financing part of these projects until, I believe, November. And so there's longer once you do that for all the practical, you've said go ahead and start to sell the bonds. And we would, of course, if you approve that. And then you're really pretty much out of it until you award bids. In this case, we've got it scheduled tentatively that the schedule to award bids on that Smoky Row project, which is half of this, would be in January. And it would be subject to the closing of the bonds because we still won't have the money until February. And so you would be awarding bonds, but subject to the successful sale. And of course, as a practical matter, by January, nothing really could stop it. You could stop it before that, but there's remonstrance opportunities for the public and all those things as a part of this 6-month process. But before you're actually awarding bids, it really can't stop. I mean, but it hasn't closed yet either. So the bids would be qualified to the contractors would bid, and you would award subject to that sale because you have to, because you can't be awarding bids and you don't have the money. And so that'll all work itself out. But this is a longer process than the budget. With that, that ends my comments.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt action item 5.2, and that is to adopt a resolution authorizing publication of notices of public hearings.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing publication of notices of public hearings.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will now take a vote. And again, the motion is in favor of approving item 5.2 to adopt a resolution authorizing publication of notices of public hearings. If you are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is the salary adjustments for the bus drivers for the 2025-2026. This item was tabled at the regular session school board meeting on August 25th, 2025. So I first will need a motion to return that item, and that is item 5.3, salary adjustments for bus drivers 2025-2026. So I need a motion to bring that back to the table.
I move to bring back the items 5.3 salary adjustments for bus drivers, the 2025-2026 that was tabled on August 25th.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So this item is item 5.3 is back for discussions. That's kind of where we left off, was in the discussion phase. But since that time, the board has had some time to have discussions and try to work on this a little bit. And it is recommended that there will be 2 increased stipends made to the original salary adjustments. So those are that the drivers receive a stipend of $187 for training and orientation days, and then a $93 per day stipend for online training. So in order to start the discussion of this, I need a motion to amend the salary adjustments. So this is to amend those adjustments to include the $187 stipend for training and orientation days and the $93 stipend per day for online training.
Madam President, I move to amend the original salary adjustment proposal for bus drivers for 25-26 to include a stipend of $187 for training and orientation days and a $93 per day stipend for online training.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this amendment? Did you have? No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll take a vote. So this vote is to approve the amendments. Again, that's what the motion was, to approve the amendments for the $187 stipend for training and orientation and for the stipend of $93 per day for online training. So we're adding that amendment to action item 5.3. If you are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And so kind of going back to what we started at our August 25th meeting was, that was item 5.2 on the agenda. We have already had the motion to approve. Mr. Shapiro made that motion and Ms. Wheeler seconded it. And so we were in the discussion portion when this was tabled and set aside. So we can continue with that discussion and then with the addition of the amendments that we just approved. So do I have any discussion?
We've heard comments at this meeting and the previous meeting, and I think everyone heard a pretty good explanation of the budget challenges going on this year, and we've got to wrestle through that, and we're going to be, I'll use the word deficit spending, meaning that we have to dip into our cash reserves to pay for expenses, and we need to do a lot of assessment of where can we cut costs smartly, and we don't know what that is. So I'm looking at it from a we're able to, or we're maybe not able to, but we are going to make an increase for bus drivers and others at 2%, and there's some other upward adjustments, and I think that's a pretty bold move to make. And the other issue, and I hear that that's not so much the issue at this point, but there's a lot of concern about whether we have a negotiating entity of some sort. And I don't know exactly what happened this last time go around. I said last time that it'd be nice if people could go back and reflect at that. One thing I do understand we have is we do, at this point, we have lead drivers, I believe it is, what they call it, at every one of the schools. And I think we're going to have to, I would suggest we rely on that entity to be representative. And but I would just suggest that the drivers themselves look back and say, what could we do to look at how we might communicate needs and requirements and concerns and in the future. And I think that that we can all find a way to continue talking. And I think the administration, from my experience in the last 2.5 years, is very open to discussions. So I just ask that that we all take maybe a step back and look at where we have been and what opportunities we have for the future. But I'll leave it at that. And I hope we can find a way to continue talking. And that's it.
Thank you.
Madam President, thank you. After listening and hearing and looking, I'm convinced our bus drivers are paid well, and I certainly appreciate the acknowledgement of and understanding of the budget constraints and the or the deficit spending situation that we're in, I really hope that what you'll find going forward and what I plan, to support is continued communications. And I don't really see any material differences between what we could do in the future and what we've done in the past, in the sense of, if the bus drivers want to communicate collectively, they certainly can do that. And what you have here is exactly the same things we've always been doing. And so I hope you'll find, I know it's hard when you're looking at elected officials when we tell you, hey, we'll do right by you, but that absolutely is my intention. And I hope that time will prove that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Koke. I want to start where I started last time, which is, thank you for the work that you do for our school district and for our students. I understand and appreciate the concern and, some of the conversations that we've had over the last couple of weeks. I feel confident that I've gotten the reassurance from some of the folks sitting up here from the administration and from others that there's a sincere commitment to cooperative communication and transparency. And if there's anything that is not that, I will be grossly disappointed. But I don't expect that to be the case. I think the finances speak for themselves, so I don't know that I need to talk about that. To me, what is more important is that the people that choose to work for our school district feel respected and feel heard and feel valued when they come to work as people. I think we all show up to work and want to feel as if we can make a living. However, we live in a really difficult climate, and I think we've clearly, earlier this meeting, outlined the difficult path that lies ahead for our school district. That being said, what came through in the comments from bus drivers both this evening and a couple of weeks ago, to me, what resonated was about being heard. And so that's what struck me to make that motion to table a few weeks ago. And so that's the work that I've tried to do between 2 weeks ago and today. And so I've gotten that reassurance that makes me feel comfortable, that we can move forward in a way that that there will be a commitment to ongoing dialogue, to open communication, and not just when it comes to talking about contracts and pay rates and things like that, but to ensuring that needs are met when things arise. And I would highly encourage people, if they don't feel like that's being met, to please reach out and let us know, because that's the only way we can do something about it.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what everybody said, and so far what the board has said, and I wanted to kind of brag on them in appreciation that we have spent a lot of time in the past couple of weeks. We were listening and listening to kind of everybody giving input on this. So when we make decisions like this, it's not a rash decision. We really have thought about this, and really one of the biggest things that conversations came out is we do want to make sure that bus drivers are heard. That was the biggest thing that came from conversations, and we want to continue to know that you can be heard. And so one of the things that was brought up is making sure that we have checkpoint specific dates set out during the year so that it isn't just some surprise date, but these are these dates that that you can come and you can bring your concerns to the table, whether it be, like the 15 lead, like Ms. Wheeler said, and Mr. Brown said, we will have these 15 lead bus drivers who can be representative and bring concerns, not just at those meetings, but anytime. And again, as Mr. Shapiro noted, this is on us as well. And so we want to make sure that if things are not going right, please reach out to us. we want to make sure, we know how valuable you are to our district, and we want to make sure that you do feel heard. So that is, I think, the biggest takeaway that our board has come. I really want you to understand how much time that they have spent in the past 2 weeks on this subject. Do we have any further discussion? We will take a vote on this item then. And again, this is item 5.3. The motion was for salary adjustments for bus drivers 2025, 2026, including the approved amendments. If you are in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is our discussion item of budget committees. And I'm going to start with a little bit of this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brown. So again, this is just a discussion item. This is not any sort of action item, but so what we are discussing is that several of the board members have indicated an interest in having a budget committee to be able to dig a little deeper into the budget process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brown.
Great. Thank you. This is an idea we've toyed with for some amount of time, a year, probably a little more than that, about, to me, the core of the issue is the financing and budgets of schools is complex and deep and different than one might see in the corporate world. And I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. I spent a lot of hours with Mr. McMichael, and I still don't. There's still more I could spend. But I think one of the most important things we need to do is we need to make sure that we are really doing our job as a board in oversight and governing, not dictating where monies are spent necessarily, but just higher levels. But to do that, we need to really understand a lot more than I think we have in the past. And I think also with a focus that we really wanted to make, and I want to applaud President Coquet on this one, is to really have a new focus going forward with the board and board meetings to focus on student outcomes. And I think we're in the process of defining that. I think we've got a wonderful starting point with the strategic plan. And as that gets taken down to the school levels, I think we're going to really see some real impacts in that regard. I think we'll have just a much better. So the real idea is to really make sure we have a lot of time in board meetings focused on looking at things that make students do the best that each one of them can do. But if we're spending a lot of time on budgets and asking questions on that, not to demean the importance of that, it's easy to get off on that in other discussions, but it requires it. So what I've noticed is there's at least a couple districts in our area that employ budget finance committees. It's not uncommon for, I think you could pretty well say, other boards like city councils and other entities like that have that. And what they will do is they decide that, hey, we got a deep, complex, convoluted topic. Let's send it off to committee, and let's let them really get deep there. And so let me read through some notes of how I thought it would be. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I don't think it needs a lot of time for presentation, but just to get through it. One thing it does do, it allows board members to develop a real expertise on a complex topic that can come back and make recommendations to the board from a board perspective, not an administration. So it provides kind of that counterbalance. It ensures that we have some that are really deeply skilled in that area, and it ensures the board's performing its due diligence in overseeing the budget. So for me, the purpose of a Carmel Clay School Budget Committee is that would provide us an expertise or an opportunity to develop that expertise. Particularly, we look in light of SEA 1, we keep talking about how it's affected our revenue sources, and it's going to be impactful for quite a number of years, as we've seen. That, how do we wrestle with that and combine that with some enrollment challenges, some declining enrollment? Those are pressures that really are going to very likely result in having to look for opportunities to reduce costs smartly if things don't change. And I think we need to have a board, a subcommittee that could do that. It would also preserve, like I mentioned, valuable time on regular and workshop board meetings to focus on the strategic plan key initiatives and performance measures as outlined in Dr. Osterreit's strategic plan. The structure, I see it conforming to our existing bylaw 0155 on committees, and it has several references to Indiana code or Indiana law. And it, just to pick a little quote out, it says the committee shall conduct studies, receive information, make recommendations to the board, and act in an advisory capacity, but shall not take action on behalf of the board. It's appointed by the board as a governing body, subject to the open door laws. The meetings would be posted for and open to the public. Minutes would be recorded and published. I recommend that members would include 2 of the board members with just 1-year terms. And the committee members' terms would start in January of next year, along with the other board positions that we vote on in January typically. And given that we're in the tail end of this year, I would recommend that the committee term would start as soon as we would decide, if we did decide to proceed with it, and the 1-year term would start in January of 26 and go through the January 27. One board member would be the chairperson, the other would be the secretary and record minutes. The associate superintendent of business affairs would represent the administration, and other individuals as deemed relevant by the committee would be brought in, or as Mr. McMichael would bring in. We'd meet monthly, particularly during this budget cycle. The initial scope would be to deep dive the 26 budget details and challenges, understand teacher and student classroom ratios all the way up to the middle school level, do a deeper review of capital projects, both short and longer term, and discuss any upcoming big ticket expenditures that might be coming up. Later scope would be as we enter the getting ready for the safety referendum preparation. They would give us an opportunity to work details on that. We could look at enrollment, what are causing the changes, and what might we be able to do to counter that. We've talked about this at board meetings before, about developing a dashboard of sorts that would have key performance indicators, KPIs, that would give an easy view as to how we are doing on certain areas of finances. And we look at long-range capital planning and grants. Grants is one thing we don't really spend a lot of time on, but it's significant. It's 15% of our budget. So I propose that we consider establishing a budget finance committee with just a 6-month pilot. Give it a try. And at that time, we would reevaluate if it's adding value, and if we would decide at that point if we would continue. So that's my proposal.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Brown on this? Yeah, just a discussion. Yeah, discussion.
Well, I know, Greg, that this has been a keen interest for you, and you certainly put together a very thoughtful process. We have also had a lot of discussion on, or some proposal for having some ISBA training, which is through IU Bloomington, on a certification that the board can go through, as well as Dr. Oestreich presenting an idea for having some, Fanning Howey, is that what it's called? Baker Tilly, sorry. Baker Tilly doing some finance training for us. So my counter proposal would be that we table this for 6 months and do our due diligence on having this finance training. I think some of these issues would be resolved if we were more fluent in finance, have the more financial training. And so then it may be relevant. It does seem strange that 2 of us would be on a committee when there's only 5 of us. So I would vote I'd feel more confident if we first had the Baker Tilly and the IU certification.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, President Koke. No questions. Thank you, Greg. I mean, you and I have spent a little bit of time talking about this. I love the concept of spending more time on the budget. The challenges that I have, or where I'm stuck, are a couple of places. One, I see this as one of the 3 or 4 primary functions of a school board member is to help oversee the budget. One of our primary responsibilities. And so while I understand that the committee would not be making decision, would not be decision-making, it would sort of be advisory and be doing some deep dive, I think that's a responsibility that we all sort of share. And I do think there's space for us to take our budget and finance work and have it be more of a discussion item within the framework of our board meetings and not be taking away from evaluating student performance, teacher performance, some strategic plan. I think there's space for those things. It may require us to look at our board meetings differently, but I think we can do both of those things. I mean, candidly, I think to have a 3rd meeting a month that requires open door law, publishing meetings, if more than 2 of us want to serve, then what happens? Because I think it's highly likely that at least 3 of us would want to be part of the finance committee. So then how do we, while certainly a 3rd person is welcome to show up, is that okay? And then if 4 of us are showing up, then what's the purpose? Then it becomes like, well, why don't we just do this at a board meeting? And this isn't a no, let's not try it, but these are some of the things I think we should think through before we make a decision. And I'm not averse to giving something a try. I just think maybe these are some things that we should think through before we go through it. Because again, if 3 or 4 of us say, hey, I'm interested in serving on the finance committee, then you've got 80% of the board that wants to show up, then we're taking a 3rd day. And again, I'm not averse to spending the time, but we're already here. So let's look at a way that we can maybe restructure our board meetings that every other month there is part of the discussion is around budget and finance, because I don't know about anybody else, but I spent a considerable amount of time when I was campaigning talking to people that this was one of the primary functions of the work that we do, is overseeing a $250 million budget. And I think it is a really important piece of the work we do. We clearly spend a lot of time hearing about how challenging it's going to become. And while I'm certainly not a finance expert, I do think part of the responsibility we have is to the commitment to the community to make sure we understand it, even if we're not CFOs or accountants, and ensure that we're making the best decisions. And so I do think it's incumbent upon all of us to have that level of understanding. I think that's the commitment we made by saying we were willing to sit up here. So that's just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Greg, I know we talked about this when I first started, and I have no problem with the concept of a finance committee. I think now being 8 months in, this is a lot like a second job that we don't really get paid for, and that's okay. That's what we signed up for. But I started thinking in my experience working with boards and committees and commissioners, the committee structure tends to be used in organizations of 7 or more board members, because you can have meetings of 2, 3, 4 people, and it makes more sense. For example, I think HSC that does it has 7 board members. Our city council has 9. That's what I thought. They had 9 board members. The Indianapolis City County Council has 21, I think. I know. And it's really hard to do a deep dive when you have that many. And I agree. Like, if we're going to have to and we absolutely should follow the open door law, take minutes, do all the steps we would do at a meeting. I'd rather just do it at a meeting because and I will absolutely, I don't love 3-hour meetings, but if that's what we need to do, that's what we'll do. Or if we need a special meeting, we can call that as well. So I tend to think there's nothing we couldn't do in a regular meeting that we could do in a committee. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm a little overwhelmed now because we all have full-time jobs and we all have roles, as I know you do, Greg, on other committees as part of our role as, other organizations as part of our role as a school board member. So I just feel like a little calendared out, meetinged out. So I don't want to have a meeting just to have a meeting when we've got to talk about it in this room in these meetings anyway, is kind of how I analyzed it.
I really appreciate this thoughtful discussion. And the only thing I was going to add is I don't truly have an opinion on this either way, but I do really think we should do the IU training as a board. Just so the public knows, there's one that through ISBA that IU is offering that is a really big deep dive and gives the board a certification in finance at 16 hours. And I think with a budget as large as it is here at Carmel and with what we are facing, I think it would be really good for the board to do that. But
If I may add, I just wanted to also thank the board for this discussion. We really appreciate it. And no matter what the format is or what it looks like, I'm committed as your superintendent to get the information to you that you need. And I know that Mr. McMichael is also equally committed. We want to get you the information that you need and request so that you can have that oversight and continue to have that oversight here in the district. So I wanted to say thank you very much.
Yeah, I just maybe a final comment would be is, I've gone through 2 budget cycles before, and I can dig into stuff, and I do dig in, and I feel it's part of our duty as a board member to dig in. And but we haven't had the challenges, the revenue challenges like we have going forward. So I just see us spending more time with it, and talking to the HSE board president. They felt this was an absolutely fundamentally important and useful committee, and their format is at the end of most meetings, they'll have reports like we have at the end where board members will talk about, you've had some parks, I've had some CRC, policy. We have these other entities for these things, like, to do policies, and so the board members that are involved with the budget committee has an opportunity to give a very brief, succinct view of what may have happened if there are some important things. It's just a very efficient way to deal with a complicated topic. So I do not, I hear that we could carve room out. I would like to see us add content to our board meetings with reviewing our strategic plan performance to objectives. And I think that needs to be the focus. And if we're going to be spending time trying to figure out how are we going to get monies for one thing, we've got to reduce it from some other place, I think we'll find ourselves spending a lot of time on that. So that's why I proposed a 6-month pilot. I'm real big on pilots in my professional career. It's easy to sit around and talk about how things might work and might not work, and you certainly can't think of all the details. The best thing is to go give it a try, a prototype. So in doing that, that's why I said let's put a 6-month limit on it. It's timely in that we're entering a budget cycle. And I think if we felt after 6 months, if we do training first, I mean, yeah, we should do training. I did a lot of self-training. I've spent, I think it's 8.5 hours with Roger in his office. Enjoyed it. Wasn't one meeting. Wasn't one. It was more than that actually, because yeah, and I learn a lot, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to say let's take a look at. If we just voted to increase the operations labor pool by 2%, that's probably a safe assessment, and we're going to start paying deficit spending. So I think we need to sharpen our pencils and and take a deeper look at it. I think it's an efficient way to do it to allow us to really implement this strategic plan. So that's the end of my comments on that.
Oh, thank you. No, we really appreciate how thoughtfully you prepared it, and again, thank you for we had a really good discussion. Next on our agenda is the student data report that was supposed to be at our last meeting, so we're excited to see this. This report is on academic excellence, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Dudley.
Thank you. I am excited to be here to be able to present our academic excellence report. So it's my privilege to share with you an update on our district's continued pursuit of academic excellence. And at the heart of our work is a commitment to ensuring that every student, no matter where they start, has access to rigorous, meaningful learning experiences that prepare them for success in college and career and in life. Then this report highlights not only the progress our students have made, but also the collaborative effort of our teachers, administrators, support staff, and our families. Together, we've built a culture of high expectations where achievement is measured not only by strong assessment results, but also by development of critical thinking, creativity, and the resilience in our students. We'll begin with the incredible iRead results. 95.7% of our third grade students passed iRead this past spring, and our scores reflect incredible growth across all groups as we're working hard to close the achievement gaps. And we have staggering gains from several key student groups. For example, special education students achieved a 14.9 percentage point increase from 2024 to 2025, and an extraordinary 25.1 percentage increase since 2021. And our multilingual learners posted the largest single-year gain among all Carmel Clay Schools reported groups, scoring 24.9 percentage points from 2024 to 2025. So very exciting. And these results are a direct reflection of the dedication and the expertise of our teachers, building leaders, and curriculum instruction and assessment administrators. Our unwavering focus on literacy ensures that every Carmel Clay student develops the foundational skills needed for future success. The state began using iRead to assess our grade 2 students to identify early literacy readiness this past spring. And we're proud to report that 85.9% of Carmel Clay second grade students have already passed or are on track to pass iRead in third grade. And so this momentum sets the stage for even greater success in grade 3 and beyond. So moving on to iLearn, that is tested in grades 3 through 8. Carmel Clay School leads the state with the highest percentage of students passing both English language arts and math. And we're encouraged to see continued growth in student performance across both subject areas, reflecting the strength of our instructional practices and the dedication of our students and our teachers. So our iLearn results also demonstrate meaningful progress in closing achievement gaps. Since 2021, students receiving special education services have achieved an 11-point increase in English language arts, while our Hispanic students have achieved a 12.4-point increase in math. And these gains highlight our district's commitment to ensuring that all students, regardless of their background or circumstances, have the opportunity to succeed at the highest levels. The 2025 Advanced Placement Exam results are nothing short of outstanding. I'm pleased to share that our students excelled at the highest levels. This year, 2,277 students took a total of 5,144 AP exams, an increase of 114 students and 553 exams compared to last year. And even with this growth, performance rose significantly. The percentage of students earning at least one score of 3 or higher increased from 91.86% to an impressive 94.64%. And of the 5,144 exams administered, 4,794 received a score of 3 or higher, reflecting a remarkable 93.2% pass rate. And one particular highlight is our AP Pre-Calculus offered for the first time this past year. All 300 students who took the exam earned a passing score of a 3 or higher, with 203 of those students achieving the highest score of a 5. So very exciting. So these results are a testament of the hard work and dedication of our students, staff, and our families. And I also want to express deep appreciation to our AP teachers. In a year when College Board transitioned rapidly to digital exams, they adapted seamlessly and ensured that our students were well prepared and positioned for success. And their commitment, expertise, and tireless efforts make them truly outstanding educators. Carmel Clay School's average SAT scores significantly exceed both the state and national averages, reflecting the rigorous academic preparation provided by our educators and the high level of commitment demonstrated by our students. This accomplishment underscores the district's dedication to fostering academic excellence and preparing students for post-secondary success. Building on this achievement, the district remains committed to continuous improvement by providing students with meaningful learning experiences that further enhance readiness for college, career, and lifelong learning. So as we reflect on the progress we've made and the work that lies ahead, it's clear that our district commitment to academic excellence is both strong and unwavering. Our new strategic plan provides a clear roadmap for advancing academic excellence across the district. By aligning our efforts around instructional coherence, we ensure that every student experiences high-quality teaching and learning, no matter the grade level or the classroom. Through robust systems of support, we're meeting students where they are and providing the resources, interventions, and encouragement they need to succeed. And equally important, we're preparing students for their futures by prioritizing real-world learning and relevance, connecting what happens in our classrooms to the skills and the knowledge our students will need beyond graduation. And at the heart of all of this work is our promise to support every student, ensuring that each student has the opportunity to realize their potential in an ever-changing world. So our path forward is ambitious, but it's very purposeful. And with the dedication of our educators, the partnerships of our families, and the leadership of our administrators and school board, we will continue to advance these strategic initiatives and deliver our mission of success for all of our students. So thank you for your support of our students and our schools.
Thank you very much for that. Do you have any questions?
I just wanted to thank Dr. Dudley for the report and thank our staff. Just truly, truly remarkable. Any one of those tests, those would have been remarkable results. For all of them together, yeah, you want to talk about results? Those are results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being amenable to postponing it a couple weeks. We appreciate you. Next on our agenda is the superintendent report, Dr. Ostrike. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question, Greg?
Yeah, I appreciate the report, and I'm encouraged, watching over the last 3 years, going in the third year, to see the big increases, particularly with the, like with iRead. We saw particularly the special ed and MLLs and Hispanic numbers just really growing. So obviously we've had a focus there. With iRead, and we've achieved the state goal of 95%, which I think is a 2027 goal or something. Anyway, we're ahead of the pack ahead of people, and that's good. We do have amazing demographics, I think, overall, that helps us improve these things. And I'm really looking forward to, I keep bringing this up, I really look forward to going over the strategic plan, particularly at the school level. When we aggregate numbers like we have here, we don't see the opportunities for improvement like we might see had we disaggregated it. An example would be like with iRead, with Mohawks, free and reduced meals, they had 82.6% on reading, where Forestdale had 93.3%. And they're similar schools. One, it seems like on the surface, demographically wise, they're both Title I schools. But Forestdale is getting much better number. There's over almost a 10-point improvement. Similarly, Mohawk's general education group, which is all the demographics except the special education group. Mohawk was 88.6% and Forestdale was 100%. So those are numbers that I think it would be nice to look at from key initiatives, like what might Forestdale be doing that that Mohawk could be looking at, and maybe you do these things, but it just, when we get down to the next level of data, we can see these kinds of things surface, and it's like it's an opportunity. It's like, maybe there's something we can do at Mohawk that we're learning from Forestdale. And I see the same kind of things with the middle schools with iLearn. Carmel Middle School was 48% in '23, now they're 49%. And the district average is 63.3, I think, overall ELA, math, combined scores, aggregate at the district level. But we saw Clay went from 50% to 50% to 58. And I don't put a lot of numbers out there, but Clay saw a significant increase from 23 to this latest numbers. And they're kind of a similar school, I would say, demographically, just looking at the surface of it. But so why? What has Clay done these last couple of years to get an 8-point increase where we've only seen a 1-point increase at Carmel? So I just wanted to point that out, that I'd like to see the numbers disaggregated as we go forward, looking at the strategic plan. And we talked about maybe having principals come in and talk about what they're doing at their schools with their key initiatives and their key metrics. And let's see. Yeah, just one other comment on the, when we compare ourselves to Indiana and to the U.S. numbers, we do way better, but I think that should be expected. We've got a lot going for us that a lot of districts don't. So I think I don't want to say it's a meaningless, it's a wonderful thing to see. And what's really, I'm happy seeing is the improvement from year to year to year. And I've seen that my 3 years on the board. This is my 3rd year. And I think that's wonderful. And so I would just like to see us, when we look at metrics going forward, is that looking at U.S., and it's really disappointing, not Carmel. What I'm saying is, to give you an example why I don't think looking at U.S. numbers is very meaningful, is out of 71 countries, we were rated 38th out of 71 countries in math. In 1990, we were 6th. So the U.S. went from 6th place to 38th. Similarly, with science, we were 24th out of 71 countries. In 1990, we used to be 6th. In a competitiveness ranking, we're 12th. In 2018, we were number 1. And clearly we are doing some wonderful things here. And but I just think there's some good opportunities for better metrics where we can raise the bar differently than maybe we're looking. So I just wanted to point that out. But again, congratulations on some tremendous improvements over the since I've been looking at the numbers the last several years. And let's just take it to the next level and see what we can do.
And so one thing I would say, Mr. Braun, is we very much are about continuous improvement in our district. And we know that no matter how good we are, we can always get better. And we also know that we want to make sure that every student is achieving at high gains. And that is one thing that we are focused on doing, making sure that all of our students are achieving, and not just on the measures that I shared here, but achieving so that they have the skills that they need to move forward. And not all of those things are tested, as you know. And so one thing, yes, we are very blessed that we have fabulous students. We have very committed families, and we have outstanding educators that work with our students each and every day to make sure that they are committed to that. And so that's a result of our test scores, and we're going to continue to improve those test scores. So thank you.
Thank you. Now moving on to Dr. Ostrike with the superintendent's report.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Tonight, we're going to start off with a couple of updates, and I'm going to start with it's fall sports season, and we're in a full swing of our fall sports. And so check out our middle school websites, our athletic websites, and the Carmel High School athletic website to catch your favorite sport across the district. Carmel High School is off to an amazing start, and we discussed that today on In the Know with Dr. O. As my guest were Mr. Jim Inskeep and Coach Kevin Wright today. And so just to give you, and you can listen to that if you missed it today, you can listen to that on WHJE.com, so you can check it out there. But give you a little update on our fall sports at the high school level. Our girls cross country team is ranked #1 in the state and top 15 nationally, which is very excited. Our boys cross country team, top 10 in the state, I believe 6, 7, around there. They're ranked 6th or 7th in the state. In addition, our girls soccer team is ranked #3 in the state, boys soccer #2 in the state, Carmel tennis #1 in the state and undefeated, so very proud of our tennis team. We have a board member who has a tennis player up here with us, and my son also plays tennis as well. So, Carmel football is ranked #3 in the state, and they're off to a 3-0 start. Very exciting. And then our girls golf team is ranked #2 in the state right now, and they have 3 freshman phenoms who are teeing it high and letting it fly. So that's really, really good. So congratulations to all of our fall sports. Doing great. We can't wait to see the season progress. And we are all cheering you on, from the school board to the administration to our community. So keep up the good work with fall sports. Also, on Saturday night, I drove over to Brownsburg and attended the marching band's first performance competition. And I just witnessed a fabulous show. And this year's show is called La Arena. And it explores the essence of the bullfight and also showcasing courage, elegance, and the clash between the matador and the bull. So you will have to check out our marching band, Carmel High School Greyhound Marching Band. And also, they have new uniforms this year, which Carmel Marching Band, High School Marching Band, was one of the last to be in those traditional uniforms. So they've kind of blinged it up a little bit. So not only are they shining on the field, literally, they're also shining with their performance this year, so you'll have to check it out. Next performance, September 27th in the Bands of America Louisville Regional. And then on October 18th, they'll be local here. You'll get to check them out at the ISMA Regional. And then there's plenty of performances after that. Or you can come to any one of our football games, and you can check them out at halftime as they perform. And so bell ringer today. It's been said by Dr. Dudley, it's been said by a lot of us, but I just want to give a shout out to our teachers. They are working so incredibly hard in the classroom, working with our students, with our parents, with our families. And also, I really appreciate them, and I appreciate the work of Dr. Dudley with professional development and our teachers collaborating with one another to work on best practice and continue to take their work to that next level. So bell ringer tonight is to our teachers. I appreciate the work you do each and every day. And with that, that concludes tonight's superintendent report. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.